Hey guys, what's going on? It's Nicole from Dogo Argentino, USA. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about the things I believe are important in terms of training your Dogo Argentino. If that sounds good, stay tuned. We're going to get into it. Okay, so the motivation for this video is I recently was contacted by an audience member who unfortunately, very sadly, put their Dogo Argentino down. And the reason they did that is because it was the fourth time it attacked a family member, bit them to blood, and they felt at that point the dog was out of control. It was a very sad circumstance. And there are several things that could have caused this. First of all, it could have been poor genetics. So a lot of people don't realize that the behavior a dog exhibits in terms of its personality is very, very, very affected by genetic selection. They think today that about 80% of dog personality is based on genetic selection, which is why it is so important to go to a breeder that has genetics in terms of personality at the forefront of their mind when they are picking pairings to breed, so that you get a stable dog. You get a dog that is going to fit into whatever circumstance you're getting the dog for, whether that's protection or hunting or a family dog. You want someone that actually cares about personality. So let's talk about my philosophy in terms of training the Dogo Argentino. So I believe that training is not just about compliance. I think that training is not just for the human. I think that training your Dogo Argentino is about allowing that dog to broadly experience things in the world in a way that is safe for it and safe for you and your family. So that is the perspective that I personally come from. Now, if you haven't been here before, welcome. I am not going to tell you that I am a professional dog trainer, although I have trained professionally in the past. I am not going to tell you that I'm a Dogo Argentino expert and I'm the only voice on the internet you should listen to. I am an enthusiast. I am a hobby breeder. I'm a hobby trainer. I do show my dogs. I do hunt my dogs for small game, but I am not the only voice. So don't take it that this is the be all and end all. This is just my perspective, guys. So you are welcome to do research. You're welcome to disagree, but this is my thought. I believe that dogs should be trained. I believe that they should be trained early and often. I believe they should be socialized early and often. And part of your responsibility as a dog owner is to do that for your dog so it's not put in a position where ultimately its behaviors become problematic. And part of your responsibility is making sure that you are researching where you're getting your puppy from. And I do have a video about puppy mills if you want to check that out. So rather than thinking that the Dogo Argentino behaves only because the human wants it to, I believe that we need to consider that it isn't just about human convenience. It isn't just about human comfort. It's about the dog experiencing the world in a way that's engaging for the dog, because that makes the Dogo Argentino happy. I think that people have this idea that dogs have very limited emotions, or they don't have emotions the way humans do, and dogs have very complex emotions in many cases. They don't necessarily have the same type of emotional response. I tend to think of it like crayons. Humans have all the colors. They have the big box. Dogs tend to have more primary colors. So they're sad. They're not necessarily slightly melancholy and bored with just a titch of anxiety. They tend in general to have much more broad emotions, in my opinion. That's my opinion. So one of the things that I think that people do a lot with Dogo Argentinos, because they're afraid of them, is they're very concerned about aggression, and that is a legitimate concern. This is a guard dog. However, I think that they base their training on what I would call a threatened motivational state. And that is not a good place to come for a dog. A threatened motivational state is a different way of saying the dog is afraid of what will happen if it doesn't do it, so it is behaving in a threatened, motivated state. And that is not always the most successful way to train a dog, in my opinion. I think the dog should come from a place of wanting to do the behavior because it meets some need of theirs and not out of fear, just to get out of fear. Dogs they have desires. They're intelligent creatures, they're sociable creatures, and they tend to move forward in a belief that they have things that they want and they want to get those things just like a human. And so they look at problems, how can I get what I want? Dogs don't necessarily behave exclusively from the idea that you're the alpha, they're the beta, and that's what it's going to be. A lot of times it's just, hey, I want this in this moment. Dogs are not really good at delayed gratification. That's something that you have to teach and train for them to do. And not every single behavior is about status. So yes, there is a lot of behavior that is based on pack status, but if a dog is comfortable in its pack, not every single behavior is about status. Sometimes it's just about getting what they want. And that might not necessarily look the same depending on the dog and the person. So for example, my dog wants to get petted. If I'm on the couch and I invite my dog up to the couch, it isn't that that dog is like, wow, I'm now a higher status because I'm in the higher seat. It's more like, no, mom's going to scratch my head. I like it when she does that. So some things are about status and some things are just about getting what you want. I think that training should be about harmony and freedom. Harmony between you and the dog, and freedom for the dog to be able to experience the world as broadly as possible within a safe parameter, meaning you don't want the dog to run out into the street and get hit by a car, run out into the street and have a confrontation with the Chihuahua dog that's untrained across the street. But you want the dog to be able to be as free as possible, because we're not trying to enslave our dogs, we're trying to live with our dogs. And so having that threatened motivational status, in my opinion, it's not a good place to come from. I think that being able to train your dog is really just a matter of communicating. You want to communicate to the Dogo Argentino what's acceptable and what's allowable. And you want to communicate, you know, lots of different things. The number one problem that I see in training the Dogo Argentino, and I get it in comments all the time, and the tragic story at the beginning, I think, is part of this. A lot of people don't engage in regular, structured training and socialization programs from the minute they get the puppy, because puppies are cute and they just play with the puppy, but they don't really put any effort into it because the puppy is non-threatening, it loves everybody. Well, that's an infant. When the puppy starts to hit sexual maturity somewhere between 8 and 10 months, that's when the adult personality starts to emerge. Breeding becomes a very strong motivation. And in that moment, that's when training, had you done it from 8 weeks, would come into play, because they start to test boundaries and they start to develop independent thought. One of the best things about training puppies is they don't have a lot of independent thought. They just kind of accept things on face value. If you're like, hey, I'm going to teach you to sit before you get breakfast, and they're like, cool, to get breakfast, I've got to sit. They don't really consider why they're doing it. They're just like, hey, what I want, I'm doing it. It's awesome. But by the time the puppy reaches like teenage years and starts to enter that maturity, they're like, well, maybe I don't want to sit. Maybe I just want breakfast. And so they'll start boundary testing. And so it's really important that you have that training in place. And so what I hear over and over again from people is that they end up really only starting training once there's a problem. And that is such a mistake. You've got to start before you've got a problem. And aggression is something that's innate in all dogs, but particularly garden dogs. Yeah, they're garden dogs too. They totally love gardens. But anyway, you want to make sure that you've got some structure so that they're not like, hey, I have got to go over there with that Chihuahua and eat it. So please train your Dogo Argentinos and you will be happier for it. They will be happier and you will have a better life. Remember, training shouldn't only be about compliance. It should be about freedom for the dog and finding things that the dog finds interesting enough that the unwanted behavior is not attracted to them, because a wanted behavior is more interesting to them. It isn't only about your comfort. It is also about working with a dog that has desires and motivations and feelings of their own. It's about harmony. It's about freedom. Dogs don't obey us because we've invested in time in training them, or because we want them to obey us, or because we think that obeying us is the natural state of the being. That's not why dogs obey. And you definitely should not try to focus your training on a threatened motivational state, i.e. fear. Do this or mad, bad stuff is going to happen to you. You're not looking for that. You want them to do things because doing them is going to get them what they want, because that is going to perpetuate the behavior. So if you want more videos like this, please like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. And as always, I appreciate your time and effort. You are making Dogo Argentino USA the #1 channel in the world for Dogo Argentino focused behavior, videos, and appreciation. I thank each and every one of you. Have a Dogo-tastic day.